Thursday, June 14th. Well, I have to admit that we did get an interesting bit of news today. I almost missed it entirely because of all the commotion at the dinner table. There's always commotion at the dinner table. You can hardly hear yourself eat. We had spaghetti, and Dougie doesn't like spaghetti and was pushing it around his plate and slopping sauce all over. And so Dennis punched him, and Dougie started crying, and Mom told him to be quiet and eat his spaghetti because he wasn't getting anything else. And Dougie said, "I'm just a poor little slob." And Dennis said, "That's right." In the middle of all that, Dad said, "Had a letter from Ray Dean today." Ray Dean is married to Dad's brother, Uncle Carl Joe, and they live in West Virginia. "Did you see it?" Dad said. He meant the letter. "No, I didn't see it. Dougie, if you don't stop that hollering right this minute," just to give you an idea of how hard it is to follow the conversation. "Well, she wants to know." "Dennis, are you aggravating the situation? If you are..." Mom can hardly eat. She's so busy trying to figure out who's causing the trouble. All this time, Tommy's throwing spaghetti all over the floor, and it's in his hair, but that's just the way he eats. "Sally, are you listening or not?" My dad is getting annoyed because he can't stand all this commotion, and it happens every night. "Why, of course I'm listening. Sam, Dennis, put your hands on the table where I can see them." "Ray Dean wants to send Carl Ray up here." Dad eats a meatball. About this time, Dougie is so upset that he spills his milk right onto my plate. "Sam, can't you do something about them?" Mom said. My dad looked up from his meatballs and spaghetti and said, "Somehow, I don't think that any of my study of rock formations and fossils prepared me for this." I don't know how we all settled down, but we did for a time, and that's when Mom finally realized what Dad had said about 10 minutes earlier. "Ray Dean said what?" "She wants to send Carl Ray up here." Carl Ray is one of Aunt Ray Dean and Uncle Carl Joe's 7 children. He's my cousin. "What do you mean she wants to send Carl Ray up here?" My mom didn't look too happy about this. "Just temporarily," my dad said. "He wants to get a job. No work down there. It'll just be for a little while until he gets a job and gets on his feet." "Send him here, to this house, to live with us?" As I said, my mom didn't seem too happy about all this. Then she said, "Don't you think that's a little strange, Sam? There are lots of other places he could go, aren't there?" My father shrugged. Sometimes he doesn't like to elaborate. "And just exactly where will we put him?" My mother had stopped eating by now. Well, we could put the boys in to get all 3 of them. Wouldn't hurt them. Then we could put Carl Ray in the little room where Tommy is now." "In the nursery? Sam, are you serious?" "It's just temporary. A month. Maybe 2 months. Maybe this summer." "The summer? Are you serious?" My father was closely examining his meatball. My mom kept going. "And when does she want Carl Ray to come up here?" My father was chewing when he answered. "Saturday." My mom almost choked. "Saturday? Saturday? Sam, today's Thursday. You can't be serious." "Why didn't she phone?" "They don't have a phone. You know that," he said. Maggie said, "How primitive." Maggie could not exist for one single day without a phone, I can assure you. "So Carl Ray comes the day after tomorrow. That should be interesting." I have to admit, I'm sort of surprised. Mainly because the West Virginia Finneys hardly ever leave West Virginia. The only time I have ever heard of Uncle Carl Joe venturing this far north was when he visited my father and met Aunt Ray Dean a long time ago. My parents talk about that time whenever New Year's Eve rolls around. That's because they had one heck of a New Year's Eve, and Uncle Carl Joe and Aunt Ray Dean fell in love at first sight. Anyway, Uncle Carl Joe whisked Aunt Ray Dean off to West Virginia. I think they got married first, and I bet they haven't left West Virginia since. They never visit us anyway. They have too many kids to fit in the car. We've been to their house, though. I can hardly remember which cousin Carl Ray is, but Maggie told me later that he is the one with the white blonde hair, and he is 17 years old, the same age as Maggie. This should be interesting. Friday, June 15th. Oh, Lord, what a day. This business about Carl Ray is getting out of hand. When I got up this morning, I noticed that instead of my mom's usual individual notes for each of us, there was just one note by the telephone that said, Maggie or Mary Lou, call me at work when you get up. Love, your old mom. Right away I knew that if she didn't leave us a list for each of us, it wasn't because there was nothing for us to do. I know Mom better than that. It probably meant there was so much to do, she couldn't write it all down. And I was right. She gave me a list of things a mile long, and all because of Carl Ray. Mainly, we had to move everything out of Tommy's room into Dennis and Doug's room, and bring the spare bed down out of the attic and put it in Tommy's room, and wash windows, and on and on. Actually, it was all kind of fun for a while. We liked to move things around, but when Dennis and I were bringing down the bed from the attic, we had a slight problem. The springs for the bed are these old metal heavy ones, and we were having trouble getting them down the stairs of the attic. So we decided to slide them down. I was at the top and Dennis at the bottom, when all of a sudden the springs lunged forward and crashed into the door at the bottom, putting a huge crack in it. And then they fell forward on Dennis, and a piece of the spring tore right into his knee. And he started howling, and the blood was pouring all over. It was a mess. Maggie was yelling at Dennis to stop screaming, and Dennis was screaming at me, saying it was my fault, and I was screaming at Dennis, saying it was not, and Dougie was screaming because he hates blood, and Tommy was screaming because everyone else was screaming. Then Maggie ran over to Mrs. Furtz, who was the only neighbor home. I'm sure she wasn't exactly thrilled about helping us after Dennis smashed eggs on her house, but she came running over in her curlers and bathrobe and told me to wrap up Dennis's leg while she changed her clothes, and then she would take him to the emergency room. So I put a pillowcase around his leg, trying to remember my first aid class. I wanted to try a tourniquet, but Dennis wasn't having any part of it. He just kept saying he was going to throw up. I hate it when people throw up. Maggie called Mom, who said she would meet Mrs. Furtz and Dennis at the emergency room. I wanted to go too, but Maggie said that Mom said that she should go, and I should stay here with Tommy. I think Maggie made that up. Maggie and Dennis were gone forever. I thought Dennis died or something. Well, that does happen sometimes. We read a Robert Frost poem called Out Out in English class last year about a boy who got his hand cut near off from a buzzsaw, and he died while his hand was being sewn back on. That was the saddest poem, because at the end of it, no one seemed to care about this boy dying. They just went on with their life. They just went on with their business. I have to admit that even though I really like Dennis and I would miss him a lot if he died, I kept thinking maybe I would get his new bike. But then I felt so guilty for thinking that I dragged the mattress down out of the attic by myself and got the whole bed together with only a little help from Dougie, and then I made up the bed and took down the curtains and put them in the wash and cleaned the windows and had just about everything done when Maggie and Dennis strolled in with Mom, who had taken the rest of the day off from work. Mom hardly even noticed all the work I had done. She was so busy drooling all over Dennis. Dennis was being pathetic. He wasn't even near dead, just had this huge bandage on his knee. He spent the entire day lying on the couch in the living room, moaning. He got ice cream and ginger ale, and Mom kept going in and feeling his forehead. His forehead? It was his knee that got hurt. Mom only said 2 things about Carl Ray's room. First, she said, "Thank you, girls, for setting that up." Girls? And Maggie just smiled and said, "It was nothing." Ugh. And the only other thing Mom said was, "I can't imagine Carl Ray in the nursery." It does seem a little funny. The room has yellow walls. That's not so bad. and frilly white curtains with yellow bunnies on them. Now that's bad. And a little border around the top of the walls that also has yellow bunnies on it. I keep wondering what it will be like when Carl Ray is here. Whenever I ask Maggie to tell me more about him, though, she acts like it's no big deal. But I did notice that she put a bottle of her perfume in the bathroom, which is strange because usually she hides it in her drawer, so I won't touch it. Everybody seems so excited about Carl Ray coming, even Mom, which surprises me because I thought she didn't want him to come. I keep wondering how we're all going to manage getting in and out of the bathroom. That will make 8 of us who have to share it. With 7 of us now, there's already a problem. There is another one downstairs, but it only has a toilet and a sink. Mom told me and Maggie that we have to wear our bathrobes now. I wonder if Carl Ray will wear a bathrobe.